I used to think my life was pretty solid. I was married to a woman named Sarah who I met during our senior year of high school. We were that classic couple, high school sweethearts who believed we had it all figured out. After college, we settled into a nice rhythm. I worked as a software engineer for a tech company, and Sarah was a marketing manager for a local firm. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. We had our own house, a dog named Max, and a promising future ahead of us. But like all stories, there were cracks in our fairy tale. I started noticing little things that made me uneasy. Sarah became increasingly distant, often glued to her phone, giggling at messages when she thought I wasn't looking. She would frequently go out with friends, sometimes not coming home until the early hours. At first, I brushed it off, attributing it to her busy work life and the pressures of adulting. But the nagging feeling grew. One evening, while clearing out the attic, I stumbled upon an old trunk filled with high school memorabilia. Amongst the pictures and letters, I found an old newspaper article mentioning our former principal, Mr. Thompson. He had retired a few years back, but seeing his name brought back memories. I recalled how strict he was, but also how he had a certain charm that made him popular with the students, especially the girls. As I flipped through the newspaper, I noticed something else, a photograph of him with a younger woman who looked strikingly familiar. My heart sank as I recognized it was Sarah, beaming with that ridiculous smile she used to have. That was the turning point. The next day, I decided to confront her. I had that gnawing feeling in my gut that something was off. My suspicions were confirmed when I casually asked her about Mr. Thompson during dinner. She laughed off the nostalgia but avoided eye contact, and that was all I needed. I could feel the tension in the room shift, heavy and suffocating. Later that night, after a couple of glasses of wine, I steeled myself for the inevitable. I laid it out bluntly, telling her how I felt something was brewing, that I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening behind my back. Instead of the honesty I expected, her reaction was a mix of irritation and blatant denial. "Why are you being so paranoid? You're just imagining things," she snapped, rolling her eyes as if I were being ridiculous. She had this way of dismissing me, twisting my insecurities into a narrative that made me feel like a fool. I pushed further, probing about her late nights, her phone, and that lingering smile she wore when she thought I wasn't paying attention. "It's called having a life, Mark. Not everything is about you," she shot back, but I could see a flicker of panic in her eyes. That's when I knew. There was something deeper hiding behind those words, something she was desperate to conceal. I could feel the anger rising within me, and for a moment I thought I might explode. Instead, I channeled that energy into digging deeper. I started connecting the dots and soon found myself on a path I never anticipated. I began stalking her social media, looking for signs of what I feared was true. The deeper I delved, the more I found subtle hints, pictures from outings that didn't involve me, late-night texts that were too vague for comfort. Then came the ultimate moment of discovery. I was at home one afternoon and Sarah's phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced over, hesitating for a moment, then picked it up. A text popped up from a number I didn't recognize. "Can't wait to see you tonight. It feels so good to be together again." My heart dropped, and I felt the weight of betrayal heavy on my chest. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time it was different. I wasn't going to back down. The emotional roller coaster I was on had just hit its peak, and it was time for the storm to break. The revelation hit me like a freight train, and I was ready to face whatever came next. What I didn't know was how ugly the confrontation would get, nor how her reactions would shape the path ahead for both of us. That evening, I was a tempest waiting to unleash. I paced around the house, trying to prepare myself for Sarah's return. The adrenaline coursed through my veins, fueling both my anxiety and anger. I could hear the clock ticking, each second dragging as I replayed the texts over and over in my mind. It felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. When Sarah finally walked through the door, I could see she was her usual self, sunny and chipper, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. She tossed her purse on the counter and asked how my day was, her voice light as if nothing was amiss. I took a deep breath, channeling all my frustration into that one moment. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. Her demeanor shifted instantly. "What's wrong?" The smile faded, replaced with a look of concern that felt both genuine and feigned at the same time. I couldn't hold back. "I saw the text messages, Sarah. I know you're cheating on me." The words felt heavy as they left my mouth, the air thick with tension. She froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. "What? That's ridiculous. You're just being paranoid again." The defensive tone was immediate, a familiar pattern I had come to dread. Paranoid. "I have the proof right here," I said, holding out her phone, shaking it slightly for emphasis. "I saw the text from some guy. Who is he, Sarah?" There was a flicker of panic in her eyes, quickly masked by anger. "You have no right to invade my privacy like this. It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," I challenged, the frustration boiling over. "Who the hell is this guy?" She hesitated, and I watched as she wrestled with her next words. "It's just a friend from work, Mark. We were talking about projects and deadlines. You're reading too much into this." A heavy laugh escaped me, bitter and incredulous. "A friend? I don't think friends text about how good it feels to be together in the middle of the night." "Stop twisting my words," she shot back, her facade of calm beginning to crack. "You're making it into something it's not. This is typical of you, always jumping to conclusions." The anger roiled within me. It was infuriating how she could turn the tables so quickly, making me feel like the villain in this scenario. "Sarah, I'm not the one betraying our marriage. You are." She crossed her arms and glared at me, her lips pursed in frustration. "You know what? I didn't want to tell you this, but I'm tired of your constant nagging. You're boring, Mark. You've become so absorbed in your work, and I'm left alone. I deserve to be happy." Her words sliced through the air like a knife, and I felt the wind leave my lungs. "Happy?" I echoed, trying to process the weight of her accusations. "By cheating with our high school principal? Is that how you find happiness?" Her face flushed with anger. "You don't understand. You have no idea what I've been through." The irrationality of her defense was maddening. "You think I don't understand? You think I'm blind to your neglect? I've been here, Sarah, and I've tried to make this work. You've just chosen to cheat instead." For a moment, silence engulfed the room. We stood in a standoff, the weight of our shared history pressing down heavily on both of us. The flickering light of our broken marriage glimmered dimly, but I could see it fading fast. "Maybe I did cheat, but maybe you should look at yourself too." She spat, venom lacing her tone. "You've been so wrapped up in your career that you don't notice anything else. Maybe I'm just trying to find someone who appreciates me." With that, her words hit me like a slap. My heart raced with a cocktail of shock and sadness. I always believed that we were partners in this life, supporting each other's dreams. Yet here she was, turning our pain into a weapon against me. "I can't believe you're saying this," I said, my voice breaking a little. "You think this is my fault?" "Yes," she yelled. "You're so busy with your stupid job that you neglect everything else. Maybe if you paid attention to me instead of your computer screen, this wouldn't have happened." Her accusations felt like daggers cutting through my resolve. I was hurt, angry, confused, my emotions swirling in a chaotic storm. "You don't get to blame me for your choices, Sarah. You're the one who decided to screw around instead of communicating with me." But she wasn't backing down. The fight was becoming more than a mere argument. It felt like a battlefield, and neither of us was willing to give an inch. "Maybe this marriage was a mistake," she said, her voice cold. "Maybe we should just separate. It's not like you even care anymore." The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with finality. I felt it echo in my chest, the reality of it settling in. It was an option I had never considered, but now it loomed larger than life. "You're serious?" I asked, incredulous. "Absolutely," she replied, her tone unwavering. "I can't keep pretending this is working." Her words crashed over me like a wave. It felt surreal, like I was watching this unfold from outside my body. I never thought I'd be in this position, facing the dissolution of a relationship I had poured my heart into. In that moment, as the realization sank in, I knew I had to make a decision. This was no longer just about confronting her. It was about determining what my future would hold. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was next. The path ahead was uncertain, but I couldn't ignore the anger boiling inside me any longer. I had to decide how to move forward, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. As the weight of Sarah's words settled over me, I felt a strange mixture of clarity and chaos. I was standing on the brink of something monumental, and the gravity of it was suffocating. The fight had stripped away the pretense, and now I had to confront the reality of our situation. It was clear that our marriage was hanging by a thread, one I wasn't sure I wanted to hold on to anymore. "Maybe you're right," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "Maybe this isn't working, but if we're going to separate, I want to know how deep this goes. Who is he?" Her expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. I could see that she hadn't expected me to take her suggestion seriously. "Why does it matter? You've already made your decision, haven't you?" "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I want to understand. I want to know what this guy has that I don't. What makes you want to throw away everything we built together?" At that moment, I could see her mentally calculating her response, trying to decide how much she wanted to reveal. But I wasn't offering her the option to dodge the truth any longer. "His name, Sarah. Just tell me his name." "His name is It's Paul," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Paul Thompson." The words felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't help but feel the irony of it all. My high school principal, a man who had once been an authoritative figure in my life, was now my wife's lover. It was beyond humiliating, and it twisted something inside me. "The principal? You're kidding me." "No, I'm not," she snapped, her patience thinning. "We've been talking for a while. He's been supportive of me when you haven't." Supportive? I bit my tongue to keep from saying something I'd regret. "So instead of talking to me, you choose to run to him. What was it, Sarah? A midlife crisis? A thirst for validation? Stop it," she shouted, her face flushing with anger. "You don't know anything. You're just bitter because you've let work consume you." The truth was, I had let my career become a crutch, focusing on my job as a means to provide for us. But that wasn't the issue, her betrayal was. "I worked hard to give us a good life. Is that all it meant to you?" "Maybe it wasn't enough," she cried, her anger boiling over. "Maybe I wanted more than just a paycheck. I wanted a partner." Her words stung deeply, like a wound I hadn't realized I had. "You had a partner, Sarah. You just chose not to see me." For the first time, I felt the real fury boiling inside me, not at her infidelity alone, but at the years of neglect I had pushed aside, thinking we'd work through them. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "You know what? I don't want to keep fighting about this. I deserve more than to be constantly doubted in my own marriage." "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly. "I mean that if you want to leave, then let's just call it what it is. We should separate." The words tasted bitter, but there was a strange sense of relief as I spoke them. It felt like cutting through the fog that had clouded my vision for so long. Sarah's face fell, and for a moment I could see a hint of regret flickering in her eyes. "Mark, please, I didn't mean." "No, you did mean it. You brought this on yourself, Sarah. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly second-guessed and undermined." She took a step closer, the anger replaced with desperation. "Let's try to work on this. We can fix it. I'll go to counseling, just please don't leave me." But I was done. I had given her countless chances, and each time I was met with excuses. "You've already made your choice. If you truly wanted to work on things, you wouldn't have turned to someone else." "Maybe I was just confused," she pleaded, but I could hear the hollow desperation in her voice. "Confused? You've been seeing this guy for who knows how long, and you want me to believe it's just confusion?" I shook my head, feeling a fierce determination rising within me. "I'm done with this, Sarah. It's not just about you anymore. It's about my own well-being." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't going to let my heartstrings be pulled. "Just give me some time to think about this," she said, desperation etched on her face. "Think about what? How to keep lying to me, how to twist this into some sort of justification for your actions." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to get this far." "Then you should have thought about that before you jumped into bed with someone else," I replied coldly. With that, I turned away, my heart racing as I walked out of the room. I could hear her sobbing behind me, but I couldn't let it affect me. I had to think about my next steps. I couldn't just allow this to happen to me without doing something about it. As the night wore on, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch, staring into the void, my mind racing. I kept replaying everything Sarah had said, every excuse she'd given, every moment that had led us to this point. It was becoming clearer. I needed to ensure that I wouldn't just recover from this. I needed to thrive. I realized that I had two options. I could wallow in self-pity, or I could turn my pain into something powerful. It was time for me to rise from the ashes of this relationship. The fire of betrayal was fueling me, igniting a desire to not just survive but to succeed. I wasn't going to let this define me. I was going to show Sarah just how wrong she was to doubt me. With that determination burning inside me, I made a decision. I wouldn't just accept this betrayal. I would use it as motivation for my future. I was going to become wildly successful, and Sarah would regret her choices. It was time to start plotting my comeback. I spent the following weeks in a haze, oscillating between anger and a newfound resolve. The house felt emptier than ever, haunted by the echoes of arguments and unspoken words. Sarah and I were living in a fragile coexistence, both of us avoiding the inevitable conversations that needed to happen. I was done playing the role of the oblivious husband, and I was ready to embrace the change that lay ahead. During the day, I threw myself into work, desperate to distract myself from the turmoil at home. I knew I had the skills to excel in my career. I just needed to refocus and harness my energy. I started taking on additional projects, volunteering for leadership roles and networking with colleagues. I remembered how I had once dreamed of climbing the corporate ladder, and now it was my time to make that happen. The more I threw into my work, the more I felt my confidence returning. I began to develop a reputation as a go-getter, someone who could be trusted to deliver results. My manager noticed my newfound commitment and started giving me more high-profile assignments. It was invigorating, and for the first time since the discovery of Sarah's betrayal, I felt a sense of purpose. But with the successes came reminders of the betrayal. On days when I received praise at work, I couldn't help but think about how Sarah would have reacted. I missed sharing those moments with her, but I realized that she was no longer the person I wanted to celebrate victories with. Her actions had severed that bond, and I was ready to move forward without her. Meanwhile, I also started to get more involved in personal development. I enrolled in online courses, focusing on leadership, entrepreneurship, and even public speaking. I wanted to build a future that was not just a rebound from my marriage but a solid foundation for my life. I wanted to be the kind of man who wouldn't just be defined by his failures but would rise above them. As I focused on my career and personal growth, I also thought about how I would approach the next steps in my relationship with Sarah. I was done being the victim of this situation. I was ready to take control. My emotions had transformed into a form of fuel, propelling me forward. I began researching legal options for separation, consulting with a lawyer to understand the implications. I wanted to ensure that when I made the final call, I'd be ready for whatever came next. When I finally sat down with the lawyer, everything became starkly real. I learned about the division of assets, custodial rights for Max, and what it would mean to navigate this process. It felt surreal, like I was in a movie, but the weight of it spurred me on. I was charting a new course for my life. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just surviving this, I wanted to thrive. As the days turned into weeks, I became a familiar face in the office, known for my relentless ambition. I found myself surrounded by supportive colleagues who encouraged my growth. One evening, while attending a networking event, I met a woman named Jessica. She was charismatic, intelligent, and exuded a confidence that drew me in. We hit it off immediately, and I found myself laughing and enjoying her company. It felt foreign to me, surprisingly refreshing. I hadn't allowed myself to think about dating anyone else, but being around Jessica opened my eyes to the possibilities beyond my marriage. It was a reminder that life could be vibrant and full of connections if I allowed it to be. As my relationship with Jessica blossomed, I made it a point to keep things casual. I didn't want to rush into anything, especially when I was still healing from my marriage. Jessica was understanding and supportive, and she encouraged me to pursue my career aspirations even further. I began to realize that this was the kind of partnership I had always wanted, one rooted in mutual respect, support, and shared goals. Every time I spent time with Jessica, I felt reinvigorated, as if I were rediscovering parts of myself that had long been dormant. I started to dream again of what my life could look like, of the possibilities that lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful, but Sarah hadn't disappeared from my mind entirely. I knew I had to confront her again about our separation. I needed to set boundaries and finalize the next steps. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of the fractures in our relationship, and I couldn't ignore them any longer. One evening, after returning home from a dinner with Jessica, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, lost in thought. I could see the remnants of her former self. She had been trying to convince herself that everything was fine, but the truth lingered between us like a ghost. It was time for the final conversation. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She turned to look at me, her expression wary. "About what?" "I've been thinking about things and I've come to a decision." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "I think it's time we formally separate." Her eyes widened, a mixture of anger and sadness crossing her face. "You're serious, just like that?" "I've given this a lot of thought. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. The trust is gone and I can't rebuild that." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "I was confused, Mark. You have to believe me." "But you still chose to cheat, Sarah," I replied, my voice firm. "That's not something I can overlook. I deserve better and so do you. We are both better off moving on." Her face fell, and for a moment I could see the cracks in her facade. "What if we tried again? We can make it work. I'll do whatever it takes." I shook my head, feeling my resolve solidify. "It's too late for that. You've made your choice and now I'm making mine. I want to make this transition as smooth as possible, but I can't stay in a relationship built on betrayal." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy. I had been through the ringer and this was my moment to reclaim my life. "I'll talk to the lawyer tomorrow," I said, my heart pounding but my mind clear. "We can handle the logistics, but I want you to know this is final." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Sarah to her thoughts. It felt liberating to finally take a stand, to put an end to the cycle of hurt and dishonesty. I had emerged from the darkness stronger, ready to embrace a future that was mine to shape. As the night wore on, I reflected on everything that had led me to this moment. I could feel the winds of change stirring, and I knew that my journey was just beginning. I had a new sense of purpose, a new path ahead, and I was determined to see it through. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change, filled with a mix of relief and anxiety as I navigated the process of separation. I met with my lawyer multiple times, discussing everything from asset division to pet custody. Each meeting was a reminder of the reality I was facing, but I was resolute. I wouldn't let Sarah's betrayal define me any longer. As I prepared for the next steps, I couldn't help but reflect on how transformative this experience had been. I had gone from feeling like a victim to someone empowered, ready to take control of my life. My career was thriving, my confidence was soaring, and the bond I had begun to cultivate with Jessica was refreshing. The time came for me to officially inform Sarah of the separation agreement. I scheduled a meeting at a local cafe, a neutral ground where we could discuss the logistics without the heaviness of home. I arrived early, sipping coffee and trying to calm my nerves. I wasn't looking forward to seeing her again, but I knew it was necessary to finalize everything once and for all. When she walked in, I noticed a change in her demeanor. The confident, almost defiant woman I had confronted weeks ago seemed to have diminished. She looked smaller, more vulnerable. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had to stay focused. "Hey," I greeted her, forcing a casual tone into my voice. "Hey," she replied, her voice subdued. "Thanks for meeting me." We sat down, and for a moment there was an awkward silence between us. I took a deep breath, then pulled out the paperwork my lawyer had prepared. "So, I have the separation agreement. Ready? We can go over the terms and make sure we're on the same page." Her eyes immediately widened in concern, and I could see her heart racing. "Do we really have to do this? Can't we talk about it first?" I shook my head, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. "Sarah, this is what we agreed on. We can't keep dragging this out. It's best for both of us." With a hesitant hand, she picked up the papers and began reading through them. The silence stretched on as she absorbed the details. I watched her expression shift, moving from concern to frustration. "You're really just going to walk away from everything?" "I'm not walking away, I'm moving forward," I replied, trying to keep my tone even. "This is the best path for both of us. You made your choices and now I have to make mine." The tension in the air was palpable. She slammed the papers down on the table, her voice rising. "You're being so cold. I didn't want it to end like this." "Neither did I countered, my patience wearing thin. "But you made that decision when you chose to cheat. You need to own that." I was confused, Mark. I thought we could work it out. I leaned forward, trying to convey my sincerity. "Sarah, I gave you plenty of chances to be honest. You had an opportunity to communicate, but you chose to betray my trust. I can't just forget that." Her eyes filled with tears again, and I felt a twinge of guilt for the pain she was experiencing. But this was the moment of truth. I couldn't afford to waver. "We both deserve a chance to find happiness, and this isn't it." She looked down at the table, defeated. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. I still care about you. I know you do, but that doesn't change what happened. I need to put myself first for once." After a few moments of silence, she nodded, accepting the inevitable. "Fine, let's just get this over with." We spent the next hour going through the agreement, discussing terms and addressing the logistical details. I felt a sense of closure in each item we addressed, but there was also a lingering sadness. This was the end of the life we had built together. It was during that conversation that I found a newfound clarity. I realized that while Sarah and I had shared beautiful moments, it was time to embrace the lessons learned from our relationship. I couldn't hold on to the past if I wanted to build a brighter future. After we finalized everything, we stood to leave. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You too, Sarah," I replied, feeling a mix of sympathy and resolve. "I genuinely hope you find happiness, but it won't be with me." As I walked away from her, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, one that was filled with hope and potential. I had come to terms with my decision, and there was no turning back. Over the following months, I poured myself into my career and my newfound relationship with Jessica. We went on adventures together, exploring new restaurants and attending events that reignited my passion for life. I found myself laughing again, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Jessica was supportive of my journey and offered me a listening ear whenever I needed to vent about the aftermath of my divorce. I began to see her as a partner who could stand alongside me in my pursuits. She encouraged me to pursue my entrepreneurial dreams, and before long, I was brainstorming ideas for my own startup. As I laid out my plans, I felt giddy with excitement. The fire that had once burned within me was rekindled, and I was ready to take on the world. I started networking with other entrepreneurs, gathering insights and advice. I began drafting a business plan and piecing together the components of what I envisioned. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal had become a catalyst for my transformation. I was no longer defined by my marriage or the pain it had brought. Instead, I was emerging as a stronger, more determined version of myself. Finally, the day came when I launched my startup. It was a small beginning, but it was a reflection of all the hard work I had put in. Surrounded by friends, including Jessica, I felt a sense of pride. I had taken the pain of my past and turned it into something beautiful. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but the journey ahead was full of promise. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace whatever life had in store. The echoes of my past were fading, replaced by the excitement of what lay ahead. I was no longer just the man who had been cheated on. I was a man who had reclaimed his life and was ready to thrive. As I stood there, looking out at the future, I couldn't help but feel gratitude for the lessons learned. I had transformed my pain into power, and that realization was worth more than any relationship could offer. The journey had just begun, but I was finally ready for it. As I settled into my new life, I found myself reflecting on the lessons learned from my marriage and the subsequent betrayal. My moments with Jessica became more meaningful, and I began to understand the importance of genuine connection. We supported each other in our personal goals, and I appreciated having someone who saw me for who I was, not just who I had been. Our relationship deepened as we explored our shared values and ambitions. Jessica was encouraging and inspiring, sparking ideas that allowed me to push the boundaries of my startup. We brainstormed together, celebrated victories, and tackled challenges head-on. I found myself excited about our future and the possibilities that lay ahead. But it wasn't just my relationship with Jessica that had transformed. The experience with Sarah had also taught me how to set boundaries, communicate openly, and prioritize my own happiness. I had learned to value myself, and it showed in every aspect of my life. I became more assertive at work, taking on leadership roles and advocating for my ideas. The more I grew, the more I realized how much potential I had within me. Months passed and my startup started to gain traction. I secured a few clients, and slowly but surely, my vision began to take shape. I felt a sense of pride every time I saw my efforts bearing fruit. I was no longer just a cog in someone else's machine. I was creating something of my own. Despite the newfound success, there were moments when the past crept back into my mind. I would occasionally see Sarah's name pop up on social media or hear mutual friends mention her. It was hard not to think about how different things could have been if she had chosen honesty and communication over deceit. But instead of dwelling on the past, I chose to focus on what I had built. One day, I received an unexpected message from Sarah. She reached out, wanting to meet for coffee to discuss how things had progressed since our separation. I was taken aback, unsure of how to feel. Part of me was curious, but another part of me was wary. After some contemplation, I decided to meet her. When we sat down at a cafe, I was struck by how different she seemed. There was a maturity in her demeanor, a sense of self-awareness that hadn't been there before. She looked different too, more composed, less frantic. "Thanks for meeting me, Mark," she began, her voice steady. "I wanted to apologize for how everything went down. I've had some time to reflect, and I realize now how much I hurt you." I nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. "It took me a while to process everything, Sarah, but I've grown a lot since then." "I can see that," she replied, her gaze steady. "I've been working on myself too. I realized I was running away from my issues instead of confronting them. Cheating was my way of escaping, and I've had to face the consequences of that." Her honesty surprised me. It was refreshing to hear her take responsibility for her actions without deflection. "I hope you found what you're looking for," I said, genuinely meaning it. "I have," she said softly. "I've started therapy, and I've been focusing on my career. I've learned to communicate better, and I'm working on being a better person." The conversation shifted as we talked about our lives and the changes we had undergone. She told me about her work, the projects she was passionate about, and how she was trying to rebuild her life. I felt a sense of closure as we spoke, like we were finally acknowledging the impact of our shared history without resentment. As we wrapped up our meeting, Sarah looked at me earnestly. "I know I can never undo the past, but I hope we can find a way to be civil. I genuinely wish you the best in everything you do." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a warmth in my heart. "I wish the same for you." Walking away from that meeting, I felt lighter. It was as if I had closed a chapter of my life and could finally move forward without the weight of bitterness holding me back. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean rekindling relationships. Sometimes, it means letting go of the hurt and making space for your own growth. As the months continued to pass, my startup flourished. I embraced the challenges that came with entrepreneurship, and with Jessica's support, I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. I was building something meaningful not just for myself, but for the people I hoped to help through my work. By focusing on my passions, I created a life that was fulfilling and filled with purpose. I was proud of the decisions I had made, the way I had turned pain into power. I had reclaimed my identity, and I was ready to take on whatever came next. In the end, I learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most painful experiences. I had been pushed to my limits, but from that struggle emerged a strength I never knew I had. I found my footing again, and with it, the realization that my future was bright and mine to mold. Life was full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it, knowing that I was capable of achieving my dreams. The journey had been tough, but now I was standing tall, unafraid of what lay ahead. I was ready for life, love, and everything in between.